Nathan Sterling stood before his floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city wake up beneath him. His penthouse apartment gleamed with the kind of perfection that came from having everything in its designated place. At 38, he had built an architecture firm that shaped skylines across 3 continents. His designs were celebrated for their precision, their mathematical beauty, their complete absence of unnecessary emotion. He adjusted his watch. A Swiss timepiece that cost more than most people earned in 6 months? The numbers aligned perfectly with the start of his day. Coffee at 7, breakfast at 7:15, departure for the office at 8 sharp. For the past decade, this routine had been his anchor. The thing that kept chaos at bay? The kitchen was a masterpiece of modern design. All clean lines and hidden appliances. Nathan prepared his espresso with the same attention to detail he brought to his blueprints. Each movement was calculated, efficient, purposeful. He had learned long ago that feelings were the enemy of success. They clouded judgment, disrupted plans, turned certainty into doubt. His phone buzzed with the morning's first emails. A project in Singapore needed final approval. The Milan office had questions about the museum design. A reporter wanted an interview about his latest award. Nathan responded to each with quick, decisive answers. This was his language, the communication of facts and figures, devoid of the messy complications that came with emotional involvement. The apartment was silent except for the soft hum of the coffee machine. Nathan preferred it this way. No music, no television, no background noise to distract from the clarity of thought. He had dated occasionally over the years, relationships that lasted exactly as long as they remained convenient and uncomplicated. When women started talking about future plans or meeting families, he ended things cleanly, honestly. Without drama, the sound that changed everything, the doorbell rang at 7:43. 17 minutes ahead of his scheduled departure. Nathan frowned at the disruption. His building had strict security protocols. No one should be able to reach his floor without clearance, without warning, without his explicit permission. He walked to the door, each step echoing in the spacious hallway. Through the peephole, he saw a young woman he did not recognize. She looked tired, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a jacket that had seen better days. She was holding something close to her chest. Nathan opened the door with the intention of quickly dismissing whoever this was. Perhaps she had the wrong apartment, or was selling something, or needed directions. Then he saw what she held. A baby. The infant was wrapped in a soft pink blanket, sleeping peacefully against the woman's shoulder. Tiny fingers curled into the fabric of her jacket. The sight hit Nathan with unexpected force, the feeling he could not immediately categorize or dismiss. "Nathan Sterling," the woman said. Her voice carried a weight that suggested she had been preparing for this moment for a long time. "Yes," replied, his usual confidence wavering. "My name is Violet Hayes." The name meant nothing to him at first. She seemed to notice his confusion and added, "Rebecca's sister." The world tilted slightly. Rebecca, a name he had not spoken aloud in over a year. A name he had worked hard to bury beneath layers of work and routine and deliberate forgetting. Ghost from the past, Rebecca. Hayes had been the only woman who ever made Nathan question his carefully constructed walls. They had met at a charity gala 3 years ago. She was an elementary school teacher, passionate about her students, always laughing, always finding joy in small moments. She was everything he was not. Warm where he was cold. Spontaneous where he was calculated. Open where he was closed. For 8 months, Nathan had allowed himself to feel something he thought he had eliminated from his life. Love. He had never used the word, of course, but he had felt it nonetheless. Rebecca had a way of making him forget his rules, of pulling him into the present moment instead of always planning the next move. Then she started talking about moving in together, about building a life, about wanting children someday. The panic had been immediate and overwhelming. Nathan had ended things abruptly, telling her he had been clear from the beginning about his limitations, that he could not give her what she wanted, that it was better to stop before anyone got hurt worse. Rebecca had cried. She had asked him to reconsider, to just think about it, to imagine what they could have together. But Nathan had already made his decision. He walked away and never looked back. Until now, the truth unveiled, may I come in? Violet asked, though it sounded more like a statement than a question. Nathan stepped aside, his mind racing through possibilities, none of them making sense. Violet entered his apartment. He noticed how out of place she looked against his expensive furniture and minimalist decor. She was real and rumpled and exhausted in a way that his space never allowed. The baby stirred slightly, but did not wake. Rebecca died 3 months ago, Violet said without preamble. Cancer. It was fast. The words hit Nathan like a physical blow. He had to reach out and steady himself against the wall. Rebecca, vibrant and full of life, gone. It seemed impossible. I am sorry, he managed to say, though the words felt completely inadequate. Violet looked at him with eyes that were remarkably like her sister's, clear and direct and seeing far too much. Before she died, she made me promise to bring Emma to meet you, Emma. Nathan repeated numb lie. Your daughter, Violet said. She is 6 months old. Rebecca found out she was pregnant a week after you ended things. She never told you because she knew you would think she was trying to trap you. Nathan looked at the baby, really looked at her for the first time. The infant had started to wake up, her tiny face scrunching up before relaxing again. When her eyes opened, they were dark and wide and curious. His daughter. The 2 words echoed in his head, destroying every carefully constructed defense he had spent years building. Nathan stood frozen in the middle of his perfect living room, watching Violet settle onto his leather sofa with a care that suggested she was afraid of damaging something expensive. The baby, Emma, had fully awakened now, making small cooing sounds that seemed impossibly loud in the silence he had cultivated so carefully. This cannot be real, Nathan heard himself say, though his voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Rebecca would have told me. Violet adjusted Emma in her arms, supporting the baby's head with practiced ease. Would she have? You made it very clear that complications were not welcome in your life. A baby is about as complicated as it gets. The accuracy of her words stung more than any accusation could have. Nathan thought back to that final conversation with Rebecca. The way he had spoken to her like she was a business associate who had violated the terms of a contract. He had been cold, clinical, certain that he was doing the right thing for both of them. How did it happen? He asked, then immediately felt foolish. He knew how babies happened. The cancer, Violet clarified, understanding his poorly phrased question. She found a lump when Emma was 2 months old. By the time they diagnosed it properly, it had already spread. She had 4 months from diagnosis to the end. Nathan sank into the chair across from them, his legs suddenly unable to support his weight. For months, Rebecca had been sick, dying, raising an infant alone. And he had known nothing about any of it. Why did she not contact me when she found out about the pregnancy? He asked. I would have helped financially. Violet's laugh was bitter. That is exactly why she did not tell you. Rebecca did not want your money, Nathan. She wanted a partner, a father for her child, someone who could actually love them both. Since you had made it clear you were incapable of that, she decided to do it on her own. Emma began to fuss, and Violet stood, bouncing gently as she walked toward the windows. The morning light caught the baby's fine dark hair, making it shine. Nathan found himself unable to look away. She has your chin, Violet said quietly, and the same serious expression you get when you are thinking too hard. Nathan rose and moved closer, drawn by something he could not name. Up close, he could see what Violet meant. The shape of Emma's face, the set of her eyes, the way her tiny brows furrowed when she looked at him. It was like seeing a mirror reflecting back through time. May I? He started, then stopped, unsure how to finish the question. Violet studied him for a long moment, then carefully transferred Emma into his arms. The baby felt impossibly light and terrifyingly fragile. Nathan held her stiffly, afraid that any wrong movement might break something irreparable. Relax, Violet instructed. Babies can sense tension. Just support her head and let her settle against you. Nathan tried to follow the instructions, adjusting his grip until Emma seemed more comfortable. The baby stared up at him with those dark, serious eyes, and he felt something crack inside his chest. This tiny person was half him, carried his genes, his features, his blood. She existed because of a love he had been too afraid to accept. Rebecca talked about you sometimes, Violet said, returning to the sofa, especially near the end. She said you were the smartest person she had ever met, and also the most scared. I was not scared, Nathan protested automatically. You were terrified, Violet corrected him. Rebecca saw it even when you could not. She said you built your whole life like one of your buildings. All structure and design, nothing left to chance. She thought maybe if she loved you enough, you would realize that the best things in life cannot be planned or controlled. Nathan looked down at Emma, who had grabbed his finger with surprising strength. He thought about all the blueprints he had drawn, all the spaces he had designed with such precision. Not one of them had ever felt as important as this moment, holding his daughter for the first time. The letter I have something for you, Violet said, reaching into the worn bag she had brought. Rebecca wrote this in the hospital during one of her last good days. She made me promise to give it to you when I brought Emma. She held out an envelope, slightly crumpled, with his name written across the front in Rebecca's familiar handwriting. Nathan stared at it like it might explode. I cannot read it right now, he said. That is fine, Violet replied, setting it on the coffee table. Read it when you are ready, or do not read it at all. Rebecca is gone. She cannot make you do anything anymore. The sharp edge in her voice reminded Nathan that he was not the only one grieving. Violet had lost her sister, had watched her die, had been left to care for an infant while processing her own devastating loss. I am sorry, he said, and this time he meant it for more than just Rebecca's death. I am sorry you had to do this alone. I am sorry I was not there. Violet's expression softened slightly. Rebecca never blamed you, you know? She understood that you were honest about who you were. She just hoped that maybe Emma would be the thing that finally made you want to change. The hospital visit, they took a taxi to the hospital across town. Nathan still holding Emma while Violet gave directions to the driver. The baby had fallen asleep again, her warm weight against his chest, creating an unfamiliar but not unpleasant sensation. The hospital's genetics department was efficient and clinical, exactly the kind of environment where Nathan usually felt comfortable. But today, sitting in the waiting room with Violet and Emma, he felt completely out of place. Other families surrounded them, some looking worried, others relieved. All of them connected by the invisible threads of love and obligation. A nurse called them back, and Nathan followed numbly as they explained the DNA testing process. A simple cheek swab from him and one from Emma. Results would be ready within 24 hours, sent directly to his email. You do not trust me, Violet said as they left the hospital. It was not a question. I trust that you believe what you are saying, Nathan replied carefully. But I need to be certain. Rebecca said you would want proof. She said your whole life was about evidence and documentation. Never just faith. They stood on the sidewalk, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. Emma had woken again and was looking around with wide, curious eyes. Taking in the busy street with an infant's pure wonder, an unexpected offer. Where are you staying? Nathan asked. Violet hesitated. There is a small hotel near the train station. Nothing fancy, but it is clean and cheap. The thought of them in some budget hotel room. Violet, exhausted and alone with a 6-month-old, bothered him more than it should have. He thought about his spacious penthouse with its empty guest rooms, designed for visitors who rarely came. Stay with me, he said before he could overthink it, until we get the results back. I have plenty of space. Violet looked at him skeptically. Why would you do that? Nathan looked down at Emma, who was now gripping his collar with both tiny hands. Her face lit up with a gummy smile that transformed her entire expression. Because regardless of what the test says, you came all this way to honor your sister's wishes. The least I can do is offer you a comfortable place to stay. It was a logical explanation, reasonable and practical. But Nathan knew somewhere in the part of himself he usually kept locked away, that the real reason was simpler and more terrifying. He did not want them to leave. Not yet. Violet studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but just until the results come back. After that, we will figure out what happens next. They returned to his apartment in silence. Emma, dozing against Nathan's shoulder. As he unlocked the door and welcomed them into his perfectly ordered space, Nathan realized that his carefully controlled life was about to become very complicated indeed. And for the first time in years, he found himself thinking that maybe, just maybe, complicated might not be the worst thing in the world. The penthouse had never felt smaller. Nathan showed Violet to the guest room, a space he had designed with the same minimalist precision as the rest of his home. Clean white walls, a platform bed with expensive linens, a view of the city that real estate agents called breathtaking. Violet looked around with an expression Nathan could not quite read. "The bathroom is through there," he said, pointing to the adjoining door. "Fresh towels are in the cabinet. If you need anything else, just ask." "Thank you," Violet replied, setting down her worn bag. "This is very kind of you, kind." The word felt strange applied to him. Nathan had been called many things in his life: brilliant, ambitious, driven, ruthless. But kind was not a word people usually associated with Nathan Sterling. Emma had fallen asleep during the elevator ride up, and Violet laid her gently in the center of the bed, surrounding her with pillows to keep her from rolling. The baby looked impossibly tiny against the expanse of white fabric. A splash of color and life in Nathan's monochrome world. "I should let you rest," Nathan said, backing toward the door. "Nathan," Violet called softly, paused. "I know this is overwhelming." Rebecca knew it would be. But she also believed that underneath all your defenses, you were capable of being a good father. I hope she was right. The words stayed with Nathan as he retreated to his home office, closing the door behind him. His laptop sat on the desk, 17 unread emails waiting for his attention. A video conference with the Tokyo team was scheduled in 2 hours. Plans for a luxury hotel in Dubai needed his review. But Nathan found himself unable to focus on any of it. Instead, he pulled up a search engine and typed, "How to take care of a 6-month-old baby. The sound of life around 6 in the evening." Nathan heard Emma crying. The sound pierced through his office door, through the walls he had built, both physical and emotional. He tried to ignore it, telling himself that Violet would handle it, that this was not his responsibility until the DNA test confirmed what he suspected was true. The crying continued. Growing more insistent, Nathan stood and walked to the guest room. The door was slightly ajar, and he could see Violet pacing with Emma, bouncing her gently, whispering soothing words that did not seem to be working. "Is everything all right?" Nathan asked from the doorway. Violet looked exhausted. "She is hungry, but I forgot to bring enough formula. I usually have more prepared, but with the trip and everything, I ran out. There is a pharmacy 2 blocks from here. But I hate to leave when she is this upset. I can go." Nathan heard himself offer. Violet blinked in surprise. "Really? Tell me what to get." 10 minutes later, Nathan found himself in a brightly lit pharmacy, staring at an entire aisle dedicated to infant nutrition. There were at least 15 different brands of formula, each claiming to be the best, the most natural, the closest to mother's milk. He pulled out his phone and called Violet. "Which one?" he asked without preamble. She laughed, a tired but genuine sound. "The blue container, 3rd shelf from the bottom. Brand name does not matter as much as getting the right stage. Look for stage 2. Nathan located the container, then noticed the bottles nearby. "Do you need bottles?" A pause. "Actually, yes. I only brought 2, and 1 broke on the train. Get 3, the ones with the slow-flow nipples." He grabbed the bottles. Then spotted baby wipes, diapers, a small stuffed elephant. Before he could stop himself, he had filled a basket with items he was not sure they needed but thought might be useful. At the checkout, the clerk smiled at him. "Someone is going to be very happy," she said as she rang up his purchases. Nathan did not correct, assumption that he was an experienced father shopping for his child. Instead, he simply nodded and paid, carrying the bags back to his apartment with a strange sense of purpose. Moments that matter. Violet showed him how to prepare the formula, measuring the powder precisely, testing the temperature on his wrist. Emma watched them both from her spot on a blanket Violet had spread on the living room floor, her crying replaced by curious attention. "Do you want to feed her?" Violet asked. Nathan hesitated, then nodded. Violet handed him the bottle and guided Emma into his arms. The baby latched onto the nipple immediately, her small hands coming up to hold the bottle alongside his larger ones. "She trusts you already," Violet observed, settling onto the sofa nearby. "Babies have good instincts about people." Nathan watched Emma drink, her eyes fixed on his face with total focus. This tiny person, who had no idea about DNA tests or complicated pasts or carefully controlled lives, simply accepted his presence without question. She did not need proof or documentation or evidence. She just needed someone to hold her, feed her, keep her safe. "Rebecca used to say that you overthought everything," Violet said quietly. "She said you could spend an hour debating the perfect restaurant for dinner, analyzing reviews and menus and locations, when all that really mattered was spending time together." "That sounds accurate," Nathan admitted. "She also said that, when you finally made a decision, you committed to it completely. That you were loyal and dependable, even if you were emotionally distant. She said those qualities would make you a good father, if you ever let yourself try." The letter after Emma finished eating and fell asleep again. Nathan found himself alone in his living room. Violet had taken the baby to the guest room for the night, leaving him with the silence he usually craved. But tonight, the quiet felt oppressive rather than peaceful. His eyes fell on the envelope Violet had left on the coffee table. Rebecca's letter. He had been avoiding it all day, afraid of what words she might have left behind. Nathan picked up the envelope, his name written in her distinctive handwriting. He remembered how Rebecca used to leave him notes, little messages tucked into his briefcase or stuck to his bathroom mirror. He had always found them slightly annoying interruptions to his routine. Now he wished he had kept them. He opened the envelope carefully and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. "Dear Nathan," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then Violet kept her promise and you have met Emma. I hope you are not too angry with me for keeping her a secret. I know you will want explanations, reasons, logical justifications for my choice. The truth is simpler than you might think." I was afraid Nathan's throat tightened. "I was afraid that you would see the pregnancy as a trap, manipulation, proof that I was trying to change the terms of our relationship without your consent. I was afraid that you would offer money but not love, support but not presence. I was afraid that Emma would grow up knowing her father saw her as an obligation rather than a gift, so I decided to raise her alone. It was not easy, Nathan. There were nights when I was so tired I could barely stand, days when I had no idea what I was doing, moments when I desperately wished you were there to help me figure it out, but I also got to experience every first without the weight of your reluctance. Her first smile, her first laugh, the first time she reached for me. Those moments were pure and uncomplicated. Then I got sick, and suddenly all my careful planning meant nothing. The doctors gave me statistics and probabilities, and I realized that Emma was going to grow up without either of her parents unless I did something. I asked Violet to bring Emma to you not because I expect you to suddenly become the father I once hoped you could be. I asked her because Emma deserves to know where she came from. She deserves to know that her father is brilliant and successful and capable of incredible things, even if emotional connection is not one of them. But Nathan, I also want you to know something else. The 8 months we spent together were the happiest of my life. Not because everything was perfect, but because for a little while, I saw glimpses of the person you could be if you let yourself feel without fear. You laughed more easily. You talked about dreams instead of just goals. You let yourself be present in moments instead of always planning the next thing. Emma has given me that same gift, that ability to just be in the moment. I hope she can give it to you too. You do not have to be her father if you do not want to be. Violet will take good care of her. But if you decide you want to try, please know that you do not have to be perfect. You just have to show up. That is all any of us can really do. With love, Rebecca Nathan read the letter 3 times, each word settling into him like stones dropping into still water. Rebecca had known him so well, had seen through his defenses to the fear underneath. She had loved him anyway, morning light. Nathan woke the next morning to unfamiliar sounds. Laughter, the high, delighted giggle of a baby, followed by Violet's softer chuckle. He checked his phone. 6:30 in the morning, 30 minutes before his alarm was set to go off, he should have been annoyed at the disruption. Instead, he found himself getting up and following the sounds to the kitchen. Violet had Emma propped in one arm while attempting to make coffee with the other. The baby was reaching for everything in sight, fascinated by the gleaming appliances and modern fixtures. "Good morning," Violet said when she noticed him. "I hope we did not wake you." "Emma is an early riser. It is fine," Nathan replied. "Let me help." He took over the coffee preparation, while Violet settled Emma into a portable high chair Nathan had not known existed until yesterday. The baby immediately began banging her hands on the tray, creating a rhythmic pattern that somehow did not annoy him as much as it should have. "Your email probably arrived," Violet said casually, though Nathan could hear the tension underneath. He checked his phone. There it was, the subject line reading, "DNA test results." Nathan opened the email, his eyes scanning the technical language until he found the relevant section. "Probability of paternity, 99.9%. She is mine," he said aloud, needing to hear the words, "She is yours." Violet confirmed the choice. They spent the morning in a strange domestic routine that felt both foreign and natural. Nathan worked from his home office, while Violet entertained Emma in the living room. He found himself getting up frequently, drawn by the sounds of life happening outside his door. Each time he emerged, he stayed a little longer, watching Emma explore her surroundings with fearless curiosity. Around noon, Violet found him at his desk, Emma balanced on her hip. "We should talk about what happens next," she said. Nathan closed his laptop. "Yes, we should." They sat in the living room, Emma playing with the stuffed elephant Nathan had bought the night before. The toy was already her favorite, and she refused to let it go. "I can stay in the city for a while," Violet offered. "Give you time to decide what kind of relationship you want with Emma, if any." "If any," Nathan repeated. The words felt wrong, impossible. He looked at Emma, who chose that moment to look back at him with those serious dark eyes that mirrored his own. He thought about Rebecca's letter, about showing up being the most important thing. He thought about the past 24 hours, how his perfectly ordered life had been turned upside down, and how he had not hated it as much as he expected. "I want to be her father," Nathan said. The words came out steady, certain. "Not just financially. I want to actually be present in her life." Violet's eyes widened slightly. "Are you sure? This is not something you can do halfway, Nathan. Emma does not need another person who is going to disappear when things get difficult." "I know," Nathan said, "and I do not have all the answers. I have no idea how to balance my work with raising a child. I have never changed a diaper or dealt with a sick baby or any of the 1,000 things that probably need to be done. But I want to learn." Emma had crawled over to him, using his leg to pull herself into a standing position. She wobbled there, holding on to his knee, looking up at him with an expression of pure trust. "Rebecca was right," Nathan continued. "I have spent my whole life building walls, trying to control everything, avoiding anything that might disrupt my carefully planned existence. But maybe the best things in life are the ones we cannot plan for." He reached down and picked up Emma, who immediately grabbed his collar with both hands. She smelled like baby shampoo and formula, and something else he could not name but was already learning to recognize as uniquely hers. Violet watched them for a long moment, then smiled. Rebecca would be happy. "Scared for you probably, because this is going to be hard, but happy." New blueprints. That afternoon, Nathan did something he had never done before. He called his assistant and cleared his schedule for the next month. No meetings, no site visits, no video conferences that could not be handled by his partners. He needed time to figure out how to be a father, and for once in his life, he was going to prioritize something other than work. He and Violet spent the evening researching childcare options, pediatricians, and all the practical details of co-parenting across different cities. They would need to establish routines, agree on decisions about Emma's care and education, figure out how to maintain consistency. When she would be moving between households, it was complicated and messy and full of unknowns. Everything Nathan usually avoided. But as Emma fell asleep in his arms that night, her small body relaxed and trusting against his chest, Nathan realized that maybe Rebecca had been right about something else too. Maybe the best things in life were not the ones you could design and control. Maybe the best things were the ones that surprised you, challenged you, broke down your walls, and forced you to become someone better than you thought you could be. He looked down at his daughter's peaceful face and made a promise. He would show up. Every day, in whatever way he could, he would be present in her life. Not perfect, but present. Not fearless, but willing to try. Outside the windows, the city lights sparkled in the darkness. Nathan had designed buildings that would stand in that skyline for generations. But none of them would matter as much as this. The life he was just beginning to build, with the daughter he never knew he needed. Emma stirred slightly in her sleep, and Nathan adjusted his hold, already learning the rhythm of her breathing, the weight of her in his arms. This was not the life he had planned. It was better, and for the first time in as long as he could remember. Nathan Sterling smiled with something that felt remarkably like joy. The end.